So let's talk about a movie that is a complete and utter paradox. A film that bombed so hard at the box office it became legendary, only to rise from the ashes and become this massive cultural icon. This is the wild, unbelievable story of Fight Club.
I mean, today, you can't really imagine the film landscape without it, right? A decade after it came out, the New York Times called it the defining cult movie of our time. And yeah, that pretty much nails its status now. But to really get how insane that is, we've got to rewind to 1999. Okay, so you see this number, $101 million worldwide. For a big movie with big stars, you're probably thinking, hey, that's not bad. But that number doesn't tell the whole story. Not even close. The real story is what it cost to make. And here's where it all falls apart. The movie cost over $63 million to produce. Then they spent another $20 million just on marketing. So when you do the math, that $100 million gross meant the studio, 20th Century Fox, lost a ton of money. To them, it wasn't a disappointment, it was a complete failure. Which brings us to the big mystery we're going to unpack here. How on earth does a movie that financially face-planted, a movie that confused and divided just about everyone who saw it, become one of the most important, most talked about films of a generation? Well, the answer is this fascinating mix of powerful ideas, really bad decisions, and a very lucky second chance.
First, let's look at what was actually going on inside the film itself. Because, it was never just about the punching. It was tapping into this very specific, very restless feeling people had at the end of the 20th century. And the director, David Fincher, he put it perfectly. He saw the main character as this product of the times, an everyman who was just suffocating in a world that had told him to shop instead of to strive. Fincher believed we were all kind of lost, trading real purpose for stuff we could buy.
So really, the movie was like a pressure valve for all these anxieties. It was about that Gen X angst, being the middle children of history, a generation raised on TV told that you could find happiness in an IKEA catalog. The film was basically a big satirical middle finger to all of that, a revolt against just being passive spectators in your own life.
But okay, if the themes were so powerful, why did it totally crash and burn at the box office?
Well, it's pretty simple, actually. The very people who were supposed to sell the movie to the world, they absolutely hated it.
From the moment they saw the first cut, the studio executives were in a full-blown panic. They didn't get it, they didn't like its message, and most importantly, they could not imagine who would ever pay money to see this thing. They thought it was a total dead end. And you can just watch the disaster unfold on this timeline. After the internal freakout, they pushed the release from the big summer season to the fall. When it finally opened, it made a measly $11 million, and then the audience just disappeared. It dropped over 42% in its second week, and that was it. The nail in the coffin. It was officially a flop. And the marketing? Oh man, it was a train wreck. To the director's horror, the studio took their $20 million budget and just completely missed the point. They advertised it during wrestling matches, trying to sell it as some dumb action movie. It's like they were trying to sell a complex, satirical steak as a simple salad. And audiences knew something was off.
The critics were just as split as the studio. I mean, the reviews were all over the place. On one hand, you had people calling it exciting, original, and thought-provoking. But on the other, you had the legendary Roger Ebert calling it a thrill ride masquerading as philosophy. One critic even called it a Nazi piece of work. With no clear consensus, audiences were just left confused.
So the movie died in theaters. End of story, right?
Nope. Because a new piece of technology was about to give it a second life, a chance to finally find the audience the studio never believed existed.
And this is how Fight Club becomes the absolute textbook definition of a cult classic. It totally failed to connect with the mainstream at first, but it was about to build this incredibly passionate following, one DVD purchase at a time.
And what's so cool is that David Fincher basically took matters into his own hands. He was one of the first directors to see the massive potential of DVDs, so he personally oversaw the entire release, packing it with commentaries and special features. It was his way of getting around the bad marketing and speaking directly to viewers to say, hey, this is the movie I made, this is what it's about.
And his gamble? It paid off big time. In just the first 10 years, Fight Club sold over 6 million copies on DVD and video. That's 6 million people finding the movie on their own terms. The audience the studio thought didn't exist was building itself, one living room at a time.
But it gets even crazier. On top of all those sales, the movie made another $55 million just from rentals. I mean, think about that. That's more than half of what it made in its entire run in theaters. The movie wasn't just surviving on video, it was becoming a genuine phenomenon.
And here is the ultimate punchline. Thanks entirely to the DVD and video rentals, Fight Club eventually turned a $10 million profit for the very same studio that had been so sure it was a dud.
So the film didn't just make its money back, it became a cultural force. But its legacy is every bit as complicated and contradictory as the movie itself.
I mean, just look at this wild list of its impact. People started actual, real-life fight clubs. Some people tragically used it to inspire actual crimes. But at the same time, it became this serious topic of academic study. It influenced Christian men's groups. It was parodied everywhere, became a million internet memes, and was eventually voted one of the greatest films of all time. It's just all over the place.
And you know who was maybe the most surprised by all this? The director himself. Years later, David Fincher said he found it alarming how some people had misinterpreted his movie. Because for him, the whole point was that it was a satire, a dark comedy. He said, "I thought the movie was funny. It was meant as a warning, not a how-to guide."
Which leaves us with the question that still hangs over this movie today. Is Fight Club a brilliant piece of social satire that perfectly critiques our modern world? Or is it a dangerously misunderstood film whose message has gone horribly wrong for some people? The answer? Well, like the movie, that's something you kind of have to figure out for yourself.